if more people just lived in their true authenticity and let their quirkiness and weirdness shine and be a bit unscripted, I think letting people fall in love with that is so much easier and sustainable for your life, because the moment that you have to feel like you have to be someone you're not, it's just not going to work out for you in the long run. But when you get to play in your truth and stay in your power and just live authentically as you, there's so much rewardness for that, because people will fall in love with you and the right people will come to you, and then the other people they'll self-evict themselves from your life.
Quickly though, before this episode starts, I've got a 10-second favor that I'd like to ask you. The majority of people watching this podcast haven't yet hit the follow button. I can't tell you how much it helps. The show gets bigger, which means we can increase our production, and also allows us to bring in some of the best guests that you want to see, while allowing us to continue to do the thing that we love. Thank you so much for your time. Just a quick heads up. This episode has a few trigger warnings to consider. We spoke in depth about mental health and suicide. So if this is something that's going to affect you significantly, please have some caution ahead of starting this podcast. Thank you. Mel, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Of course, we had some technical difficulties at the start there, so we've been working together for the last half an hour to fix them, but we're here and we're thriving and everything is good. So I'd love to get a feel for basically who you are, but in a bit of an elevator pitch. So, and how you're contributing to the world. So
I love that. Okay. We're starting off with an elevator pitch, but my name's Mel Yu. I'm a brand builder and business coach. I've been running my events company for the better of coming up to 7 years. And I add value to the world by sharing, I think, my lived experience, my transparency, and all of the wins and the losses that I've kind of had throughout life. And I show up online and I give back to the community. Everything I do is very purpose driven.
Mm-hmm. And what got you into events?
I kind of just fell into it, to be fair. So growing up, I actually studied psychology. I was really fascinated about the human brain and human behavior. And so I was a provisional psychologist for the better of 4 years after my honors. Mm-hmm. And life has a funny way of kind of presenting its own way of where you're going. So you think you're on one trajectory and then life kind of snowballs and surprises you with something else. And so there's no other way to say it, but I lost my late partner to suicide when I was 23 years old, and that was really the fork in the road for me. I was suspended from being a psychologist because it was very close to home. It was the best thing that happened to me because I was someone that was like, let's get back to work, let's get back on it. And my supervisors in that space was like, you need to take some time off. And during those 6 months, I actually fell into an events role running these tattoo conventions around Australia. And that 6 month that I was suspended ended up being an entire career change. I realized I was incredibly good at event management. I think there's a lot of similarities because if you love events, you love people and you love working with people. And I take a lot of my psychology skills into that. But yeah, I ended up falling in love with the event space and I just guess I haven't left. But 100% fell into it, didn't think that I would be in that industry. But then I think looking back in hindsight, the dots make sense.
Mm. So for context, I've been running events and festivals for about 10 years as well. So I don't know if you knew that, but this is a fun little side hobby that I'm moving into, potentially the main hobby one day. So
yeah, awesome.
Yeah. You go.
It's a hard industry.
It is a hard industry. Yeah. What did you like about it?
Well, I'm still obviously like really heavy into it, but I think I love the event rush. I love the sales high. I love being a fly on the wall at my own events and seeing a bunch of people collectively come together based on your hard work and all of the planning. There's so much meticulous planning when it comes to the events that we run. The events that we run are massive conventions. They're conferences, expos that go for 3 days. So probably in a similar field for you in terms of festivals, it's all in the planning. And then when the doors open, it's kind of, I don't know, my heart. Yeah, the payoff, and no one might necessarily even know who you are as the founder of the event, but it's more seeing people put a smile on their face. And what drives me is at the end of a year, there's certain milestones that you look back on and you go, that was such a highlight of my year. And I just hope that my events can be those for people where when they look back at the end of the year, they're like, this one event I went to, I created an epic memory, or this one event I went to, I met someone that was now invaluable in my life. And that can only really happen from in-person events.
Yeah, there's definitely some magic to connecting people to one another. That's something I realized when I was getting started in the industry, that the work that we do allows people to connect, and it just creates these webs of stories. And, you know, over the years, there's been relationships and weddings and children and, like, you know, best friends and all of this stuff just kind of orbiting around this ecosystem of the events that are being thrown, which is really, really cool.
I think when you think about events, our life is made up of a sum of events that happen to us or that we attend. Whether it's a birthday, whether it's an anniversary, whether it's a job or a promotion or a party or a dinner gathering, our lives are very social. And so then you add on an extra element of events that you might go to find like-minded people. So if you think about festivals, you're literally bonding over the genre of music. Or for us, if you go to a business networking event, you're literally going because there's a set of core values that people go and congregate and have a feeling of belonging. And I'm obsessed with that. I'm obsessed with people having that sense of belonging and crafting and creating those spaces where people go, I feel seen and heard. Like, that stuff's epic.
Exactly. Well, just before we get into this in more detail, I do want to take a step back and just understand you a bit more. What are the contexts of your early years that allow us to kind of understand the direction you took and why you got into psychology, and then, you know, maybe why you did your flip into events? And yeah, so what are those contexts?
Yeah. With the psychology background, I'm incredibly self-aware. I've done a deep dive into my own history and my life. So growing up, I grew up in a small town called Patterson Lakes. And so for those who aren't really Melbourne-based or live here, I call it the Summer Bay of Victoria, where there's amazing palm trees. And in the 90s, though, it was a very predominantly Western community down in, you know, towards the Mornington Peninsula. And I am 100% Chinese. My parents immigrated here from Hong Kong for a better life, as most immigrants do. But I think growing up, without actually having the awareness, I was born to stand out just based on the color of my skin. We very quickly became sort of that Chinese family, the token Asian. And I say that now with awareness, but I think when you grow up as a kid, all you really want to do is fit in. And so all you really do is try to blend in. And that was really early on, just feeling like I didn't belong. And then my parents divorced when I was very young, at 3 years old. And in the Chinese community, we also don't talk about mental health. A lot of Asian backgrounds and cultures, mental health's kind of a thing that brings shame or just questions for families. And
why do you think that is?
It's just a historical thing. I think we don't talk about our feelings. Chinese communities, especially, I can only speak from lived experience, we're very academic driven, and it is a lot about like bringing status to the family. So you'll see, we joke about it, there's memes everywhere, but it's like you're either a doctor, accountant, or a lawyer or an engineer, and then that's kind of the only careers that we get to set off as, because the status of what we do is very important traditionally in a family sense. And so when things happen like mental health, depression, anxiety, they're things that are just not meant to be brought to light. It's meant to be sort of like processed by yourself. And as we know now, as we step into it, we know that that's not the case. And actually sharing is very, very healthy. You know, our ability to share a problem shared is a problem halved sort of thing. But we didn't have that. Definitely in the 90s, or even now to this date, it's still not as common. People are a bit more open to it, but I think it's a cultural limitation. It's a cultural belief of a set of values that we've grown up with.
What do you think that does to a culture?
I think for someone that's born in not their culture, so if I was maybe born in China or in Hong Kong, I might have grown up very, very differently. But because I was brought up in a Western society, I have different challenges that I had to be brought up with as a kid. Like I said, I didn't fit in. And it's that you don't fit. You're not white enough, but then you're not Asian enough. So there's this sense of enoughness where you don't fit into either groups. And I still to this day I have meetings, I'm very social, and people will ask what background I am. And I'll say I'm Chinese, and they'll be like, oh, but you don't look Chinese, or like, oh, I would never have guessed that. And they're very innocent comments, even as adults, right? But when you can't pinpoint that person, it's hard to put them in a box. Or when someone says like a loose Asian joke that we can take lightheartedly, but then they'll look over and be like, oh, but not you, Mel, because you're like not that Asian.
Yeah,
but
right.
It's that's the very thing that makes us feel that we don't belong, because it's like, oh, but I am Asian.
Yeah. What do you do with those kind of interactions? How do you navigate that?
I think recognizing that people don't have full context. So people are always operating from the lens that they have and the lived experience that they have. So if there's an opportunity to educate, or there's an opportunity to challenge the status quo or what the stereotype is, then I can. But otherwise, it's also not in my place to educate every single person. I think you can sort of sometimes pick your battles and laugh things off, or like join in on it. I don't take things personally, because I know who I am. I'm incredibly self-aware. And if other people have a misconception or a predisposition of who I am, that's okay too.
Yeah, fair enough. I mean, just for some extra context, I was born in Australia, but my dad was born in Egypt. So I only just recently understood. He never wanted me to learn Arabic. He was very, English in all of his interactions pretty much at home. My mum was born in Australia, so there's kind of like half. And I only recently just clicked as to why he didn't want me to speak Arabic, because he felt like an outsider. And I think I haven't asked him specifically, but just piecing together some conversations, and, he's run his business. He was an engineer, he's an engineer, and he's run his business for a long time. And then I'll talk to him about my experience, and I'll say, all these doors just opened for me. Like, I can pick up the phone and get things done. And he's like, yeah, I can't do that because I'm not you. And it just kind of, the penny dropped that the reasons why he didn't want me to learn Arabic, which I would have loved to have learned, is because he wanted me to be Australian, and he didn't want to have any significant external challenges added. So
I think a lot of parents that I don't know how old you are, but like that migrated here. Well, okay, awesome. So we're very similar ages. So when our parents migrated here, so my partner's the same. So my partner Jordan, he's Italian, but he's Australian Italian. So he can't speak any Italian, although he wishes that he could. But when we talk about his parents that moved here too, everyone was basically like, we had to squash that ethnicity in us because it was survival. When we moved here and all these cultures kind of immigrated here, we had to learn English. We had to change our names so that we had more of a Western name. Like, this stuff still exists. And people would, if you look too Greek or Italian.
What's your non-Western name? What's your actual name?
Well, my name is Melissa. This is so funny, a conversation that we have. But I mean, I have an Asian name too, but as in on paper, on passport, my name is Melissa Yu. That is my name.
What's the Asian name?
It's Yu Sin Ting.
Yu Sin Ting. And that's your full name?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. And so going back to that, like if you looked to WOG, right, you were bullied for it. And so I think a lot of us lost that for the generation now, which was us. And we miss, like, I wish everyone was bilingual, because it's actually such an amazing skill to have, like to know another language. And I don't think we appreciate it until in our adulthood. So, you know, when you've just asked me, how did my childhood play a part? Well, it played such a significant part. It played such a significant part to the way that I am now, the way that I articulate, and how I fell into being fascinated about psychology is because I just couldn't understand a lot of things. So I was naturally such a curious kid. And so I would dive into these psychology frameworks because my parents divorced, you know, I felt like it was my fault. I just was always searching for this sense of belonging. And so hindsight, I'm now in a field of work where all I do in events is make sure that people feel belonging. And it's such a thing because I didn't have it.
What kind of techniques do you take to help people feel belonged in an event space?
First of all, like really seeing my audience. So if we're creating an event and whatever that may be, when we're taking on a client event, really understanding and getting to know who that audience is that's going to come to that event and what's going to bring them value. And
how do you do that?
Knowing people, seeing people, talking to people. I think the like attentive listening, when we ask clients like what the brief is, we're not just asking them to tick off boxes. I genuinely have a curiosity of how I can be immersed into sort of that culture. And I have a belief and a perspective that I think that we're much more the same than we are different. And it's allowed me to build a very successful business because we can go into any business and go, well, what are the similarities here? How can I connect with you? How can I be part of this? And then extrapolate those values and bring it into an event form. And I think if you understand people, you'll be very successful in business, because business essentially is just about how do we solve people's problems.
Yeah, definitely. And what else do you do to try and help people feel like they belong?
I think listening and not having any judgment.
Yeah.
Belonging comes from feeling seen, heard, and understood, right? They're the core foundation of what we really exist in this world for. And there's a lot of study and research. If someone doesn't feel seen, if someone doesn't feel heard, and if someone doesn't feel like they've got purpose on this earth, it's how suicide happens. And I've lived through that. I've lost someone very, very close to me that didn't feel those three things. And that's my own journey, but I'm going to make damn sure that doesn't happen to anyone else that crosses my path.
Yeah. I feel like I've had some similar scenarios with a lot of friends. I'm not someone super intimately close to me, but there's been over the years just a number of friends that have done the same thing. So, and it always, I always wonder as to whether I could really have helped them, but I feel like a lot of the times I don't think I could. I think it's really tough, but it's their own thing that they're going through. Is that something you want to talk about more, or is it like where's your head at with that?
I'm very healed from that journey. I lost my partner 10 years ago now, so I think there's been a lot of personal development work coming from that. Is it a fork in the road that shaped how I live, breathe, and act? Absolutely. It's not something that I shy away from. It's very much a part of who I am in my day-to-day living. But yeah, like I speak about it so openly because I'm healed by it. I don't have any more trauma around it. I do a lot of work in advocacy in that space. When we run our events, we always have a social impact element to our events, whether it's donating the percentage of booking fees to our chosen charity or having a charitable element from merchandise that goes through to these things. So it's very naturally embedded into why I'm so purpose-driven. And I think we find our purpose when we go through something that challenges us or is a struggle for us or that we've lived. And when we want to overcome something, I think that's where we really find deep-rooted purpose, because we want people to see us, understand us, and also like if we can share and help someone not go through that, that's how we create meaningful conversations and a meaningful life.
I'm careful to approach this, but do you, from what you've learned from this experience, with this intimate loss, what could you impart to others who might have people on the edge?
You can love someone, but you can't save them. And I think as humans, and the relationships that we keep are incredibly important. When we look back on our lives, it's never about what we bought, all the successes that we had. I've spoken to many people, and it always comes down to how meaningful were our relationships. And so I've been on both ends. And I think I would say, for those that are caring or potentially in a space where you're seeing a loved one go down that dark hole, we can love them, we can hold them, we can guide them. Sometimes we can take the weight off their shoulders. But at the end of the day, like what you said, Adam, like it is their choice, and it is their own self-awareness and work that requires them to see things differently. But we can absolutely show that we love them. We can absolutely send a text to say that we are here. But you can take a horse to water, you can't make them drink it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's heavy. It's you always wonder what you could do differently, right?
Yeah, but with suicide, it's the perfect storm, right? Suicide is one of the only modalities of, when we're going so deep here for, we can spin it back around, but suicide is the only way. Our brains are so developed. The human brain is so developed in critical thinking. We have such a large prefrontal cortex, which is all about the cognitive. We're the only species in the entire world that has the ability to kill ourselves. Every single other animal,
Really?
every single
Wow,
other
I didn't know
animal.
that.
Every single other animal has a fight or flight response. People have a survival mechanism instilled in them. Humans, we can literally convince our brain that we want to end our life earlier than is necessary because of the stories that we tell ourselves. So I'm incredibly passionate about your mindset, because your mindset is everything. It will create you opportunities, it will create you abundance, but it's also the very reason why there is so much suffering in the world. And so many people in this world are suffering more than they need to, because they're suffering twice, from one, living the experience, but then two, never letting go of the stories that they continue to tell themselves about that experience.
Do you think there's actionable techniques and tools people can use to begin to let go of that story that they're telling themselves?
Absolutely. And this is the work that we do, right? It's the internal work that you can't go to the doctors and say, hey, my arm's bleeding, please give me some medicine or something. It's the deep work that you don't often see. And when we don't often see that internal work, people avoid it because, well, there's no real evidence in it. But you can definitely learn mindfulness. You can learn meditation, you can learn gratitude. There are a lot of things in this life that is worth living. And I think on the macro, life is actually really beautiful. Suffering is inevitable, but I think on the macro, if we can choose to see it, the fact that we're even alive and breathing and the ability to even have this conversation, like that's how I lead. I lead with such intense amount of gratitude that, I think we can all do that.
Yeah, I agree too. I think, so with the deep work, like just going back to the experience specifically, like it's very hard to not, without being the person to explain how he felt at that time. From what you saw and what you've taken on in your life and how you're communicating to others now to hopefully steer this kind of stuff into a more positive direction. What other specific things, breath work and meditation, all that sort of stuff. I think a lot of people just like hear it, but don't actually click to it because it's quite a long journey to get to a point where meditation becomes a positive impact in your life. It's like going to the gym. It's very hard to get a person who's extremely obese and overweight to make those steps to get to the point where they see the value of doing this sort of stuff. And I feel like the same thing is with mental health. So from your experience, do you have any like key things that somebody on the outside can help to just snap people out, maybe in dire moments, just snap people out for the moment? Like what do you think?
So the first thing is anyone that's actually listening to this podcast already, I think, has somewhat of a personal development intuition, because you're not listening to, you wouldn't even be in the target market of who I'm speaking to if you've already tapped into this podcast. But the understanding is that mental health isn't a one and done sort of thing. Your mental health journey is an infinite game until the day that you die. It's about staying mentally well, and you're always going to be on a spectrum. Mental health is just like physical health. There's not like a bad and then a good. There's a spectrum of it, and we can rank ourselves between high and low. And when something happens, we lose a loved one, we get in an accident, or something triggers it. COVID was the perfect example of that, right? A pandemic hit, people's mental health deteriorated. That is to be expected because something was an outlier that affected your life. And so I think understanding first and foremost that it's a spectrum and it's okay to ebb and flow between it. That is the journey of life, that it has its ups and downs. But when you're at your very lowest of lows, finding hope is the only thing that got me through my darkest days. That somewhere along the way, no matter how dark it was, I still had this slither of hope. And there's a saying that says that you can go without food for 3 days, you can go without water for 7 days, but you can't go a moment in life without hope, because the moment you lose that, it's hard. It's helplessness, it's loneliness, it's all of those things. And for someone that's going through a really, really dark time like that, the immediate thing I would say, instead of just snapping out of it, allowing your emotions to move through you. Now, let me actually break that down, because what happens is I feel like we get shunned for feeling certain ways, so we try to stop it. But the very word emotion is energy in motion, right? It's the E in the motion. You have to allow it to move through you and release it. So whether that is crying, which is such a healthy release, whether it's screaming into a pillow, you have to allow it. Instead of rejecting that emotion, let it run through your body. Because what happens after a big cry, like what actually happens? Like you feel a lot better. You might fall asleep and pass out, and then you wake up and you're like, oh, like I actually feel better from it. And so if we're talking specifically about suicide, what I say is if you're thinking about it, that's fine. Okay, allowing yourself to actually think about it, but giving yourself 24 hours before you actually act on it. Because the difference between thinking about something and acting it is actually leaps and bounds. It's actually your life. And so often when we talk about suicide, it's a very final, permanent decision for what often is a temporary feeling. And I'm saying this with love, because I know that some people might listen to this if they've ever been there and go, well, that does feel really permanent. When you're feeling that low, it feels like that is your only option. However, on a long enough time horizon, I actually promise you that too will pass. The emotions inevitably will move through us. And it's also around surrounding yourself with the right people. If you're around negativity every single day, day in, day out, of people that don't believe in you, and it's easy to not believe in yourself. You forget to believe in yourself if you're around that. So having an audit of your social circle as well is incredibly important. And if you can't find that social circle, if you can't find the people, if your parents are negative, if your family, friends, all of that are negative, search up online. We live in a world in this day and age where mentors are like at the touch of our phone. They're a Google search away. And so there are, if you seek to look for it, and I'm one of those people that I'm constantly putting my hand up to go, hey, how can I help? And I really live and breathe those values. So if I'm one of them, I know that there's plenty of other people, probably like yourself, Adam, if a friend really needed help, you'd be there. You'd drop everything and you'd be there. Exactly.
I feel like the space that you're in when you're feeling that like darkness is like, I didn't understand it for a very long time. And then in 2019, I finally understood, because, and I can see how people might feel like it really becomes this point of helplessness, right? Just on a specific example, like there was a big breakup that I went through, and it really rocked me. And for whatever reason, in hindsight, the breakup is the breakup, whatever. but for whatever reason, it just triggered a bunch of different things that I was not ready for by any stretch. And maybe one or two I could have handled, but it hit like 5 or 6 just real doozies. And I remember just this like spiral of anxiety that just wouldn't go away, and just these looping thoughts, and then I couldn't sleep, and then I'd be tired, and then I'd be more anxious, and then I would and I just remember that I'd meditated and, done a bit of mindset work prior to that point. And I remember, having a part of me looking at it a bit more objectively and going, wow, this is like, I can see how intense and problematic this can become, and how this quickly becomes a spiral. And there were moments where I was like, I'm so sad. I can't sleep. I'm so anxious. Every night it makes it worse. I only have one choice. Because it's just getting worse and worse and worse. And that was suicide, right? Luckily, I never did it, because again, the thought and the action, they're very far apart.
People still live with people that have had, suicidal ideations, and that's the part, right? Like, there are people that live and think about suicide more often than the average Joe. But the fact that they keep choosing life, and it's showing that you can override your brain and you can override your patterns. It's when there's two things. So it's like the words I am, I'm sure you've heard of this. And then what you say after those sentences of I am are everything. They're your entire identity. So whether you think that I am depressed or I am having a moment of depression are two very, very different identities that we take on. The I am depressed or I have depression is a final noun. It's an identity. It's closed. The sentence is done. But I am someone that is going through depression, or I am someone that's having a moment of depression or anxiety. Now it becomes a doing word. It's a present tense. And if we see it as a verb, if you see it as just like shopping, eating, walking, jogging, it's a doing word. And so that word, there's no finality in it. And so really teaching people, and this is where CBT, cognitive behavior therapy, or NLP really works, is because the stories that we tell ourselves become our reality. And this is Joe Dispenza's work. They talk about the words that we actually say to ourselves have so much weight. But if we don't bring them up to our awareness, you can end up just in this loophole of this like behavior. There's no pattern interrupt. And I'll tell you now, because I've lived it, and thinking of suicide for 5 minutes is a very, very long time. Because we're not able to see, when I talk about that long enough time horizon, we can't even see days ahead or moments ahead, let alone try and envision, breath work, meditation, all of that stuff's great. But when I'm in crisis,
first,
you have to pull back and take a breath first. And so I think it's allowing that time to just, and it's okay. I think if you've lost your first breakup, right, doesn't matter what the trigger is, it's a real heartache for you. And anyone that's actually arguably gone through a breakup, I would say heartache is the worst pain. Give me a broken arm or something any day compared to ripping my chest out and wanting this heartache to end. Heartache is the worst pain. It's why so many writers and poets and artists and movies talk about love, because it's the very thing that, if we risk it all, it's painful.
Following on to that story as well, fast forward, it's 2024 now, so Jesus, 2024.
5 years. Yep.
5 years. That time period was the most catalytic and exponentially growing period of my life. So who I became after that is somebody that I could never have dreamt of being prior to that. And I don't know if that comes from just like getting a bit older, but I don't think so. I think there was some fundamental developments that occurred, and they occurred purely off the catalyst that I was fucking miserable. And I'm like, I have to do different I have to do this differently. I have to do better. And, that doing better is a journey in itself. And the definition of better for me is changing, daily. But I'd look back and go, sure, maybe that girl might have been somebody I could have married, and that could have been one of those moments. However, I wasn't the right person in that time to be that person for that long-term relationship. And then second to that, if I had to go back and do it all again, it probably would have to happen again, because who I am now is just leaps and bounds above anyone I ever was. So,
but that's such a powerful share, and thank you for sharing that as well, obviously with your audience. But it's that vulnerability, and that's where the character making stuff is built. You don't learn, and I don't know if you would agree with this, but no one learns from their successes. Like, no one learns when everything goes right and you take the win and it's a big W and everyone celebrates and cheers. All you do is kind of get drunk and celebrate and move on to the next thing. But when you actually lose, if you're talking sports, if you're talking the job that you didn't get, the promotion that you didn't get, the girl that you didn't get, when you take an L, there's something that happens in that one is incredibly grounding and humbling when you take an L. And no matter how much you don't want that loss, it's integral to your inevitable success. It's integral to your inevitable personal development and growth journey. And I call it post-traumatic growth. So there's things that are like post-traumatic stress, but there's post-traumatic growth. The person that you become because of that shows that humankind are incredibly resilient. We can go through stuff that we thought we would never be able to survive and come out on the other side, and not only have it shape us, but it shapes others on how we act and communicate with.
Yeah, exactly. From my personal experience, we hadn't really experienced any major challenges until COVID. And as much as everyone likes to, dunk on everyone else and shit on everyone else about how we could have done this and could have done that, on a collective basis, I think humans, when pushed against a wall, like we rally. And as a species, we just when we have to, we seem to just get it done. But when we don't have to, we do fuck all. Yeah.
I think another real world experience, and we're not going to go into politics, but let's just take any war, for example, right? Not just the current one that we happen to be in, but when you look at mass people dying at war and when history repeats itself, the one thing that happens to humankind is, yes, you could say we're tearing each other apart, but there's also this sense of unity and this when people rally together, that imagery, it's no, there's still hope, because for as long as we're fighting and for as long as we're alive, there's still something worth fighting for. And we see it right here and now within our own worlds, all over, that people bond. And I think on the macro, we're good people.
Yeah, well, we just like to beat each other up.
Yeah.
We've been doing that since the dawn of time.
Yeah.
The only challenge now is you've got some weapons that are a bit spicy, so we've got to be a bit more careful.
Exactly.
Yeah. Going on that note though, not using specifically war and stuff, it's interesting how as a species we can work so well together around a collective story. And going back to the stories you tell yourself, it's the same thing. The stories we tell ourselves on a societal level can make or break the society. So
100%. We can, and this is how far macro I do go, but we can walk around every day and kill everyone, right? But we don't, right?
No,
but we actually don't do that because of these, we've actually got these universal morals and ethics as a humankind that has gotten us to be the top of, the food chain. We're actually on a macro, we get along.
Well, we need to, because
to survive.
We're weak.
Yeah,
little things, but we seem to make great teams.
Yeah. But and just circling full circle on that, the reason why we're able to do that is because of our brain. It's because of because you're right. We are actually weak, frail beings. Like, we couldn't go against a bear or a lion or whatnot. But like, our cognitive function, though, is second to none. And we've just continued to develop and develop and develop this human brain of ours. And we're still kind of discovering, going down the deep rabbit hole of how far our brain has. But it's like, really, we've created this world and we've created society with unlimited potential. There's always sort of this progression, because otherwise we could have been taken over a long time ago.
Well, yeah. I mean, have you read the book Sapiens?
No, but I've actually got it.
Get it. Put it to the top of your list.
Yeah.
It's everything we've been talking about and more.
Yeah.
It's really, really interesting. If you're curious about like psychology and the human experience, it's probably one of the best books I've ever read. So
amazing.
When you read that, come back to me. I'd love to hear your feedback. Coming up a bit lighter, you mentioned very briefly a little while ago that, you're the type of person that would drop everything to help somebody. Run us through a story where you've helped somebody and then it's just had a really massive, meaningful change in their life.
The meaningful change needs to come from them telling the story, not me making the meaningful change.
Enough.
But
maybe you saw and you were like, wow, okay, that's nice.
Yeah. I get this every day, and that's not to be egotistical, but I genuinely get words of affirmation and genuine kindness all over my socials every single day because of the way that I might have treated them, the way that I spoke to them, how I gave them time. I'm very, very generous with my time. Often with no payoff. But I think from my own lived experience, sometimes giving people that moment of time and that moment of attention like this, my phone's on airplane mode, I'm very dialed into this conversation. As soon as I get out of this conversation, if I turn on my email notifications, there's going to be 8 other fires to put out. But the reality is when I feel someone really needs that window of time, it's nothing for me, but it's everything for them. And there are times where, because I do advocate so heavily in this space, people feel that I do have lived experience that can hold them. And so I've been with people where they've been contemplating suicide and I'm the phone call that they've called. And there's been times where people have been in hospital and the person that they've DM'd is me. And I'm like, I've always gone back and been like, what the hell? Like, I'm someone that they know on the internet. I'm not a professional in my field at all for that. There's doctors and psychologists and all of this stuff that they could go out and reach out for, but they've chosen to DM me as a stranger. But the reality is, because they somewhat feel connected to me, because I'm very authentic, I'm very transparent, and who you get online is who you're going to get in the real world. So I'm someone that embodies my values. Anyone that's deep and rich in my community will know I live and breathe my values. They're not just the 4 core values put up on a toilet wall or anything like that, and then we go on our merry ways. I'm very anchored in what gives me purpose, which is why these conversations, they mean a lot to me. And anyone that's listening, it's like, it means a lot to me. Like, I give my time so generously because I know the value of it. So in a roundabout way, I think seeing people for who they are, giving people time, and just actually asking how they are and not just skimming past it. It's these seemingly small things that it's like, oh, that can't be the thing that makes a difference, but it is.
Have you seen the movie Inside Out by any chance?
Is that the animation movie?
Yeah.
I have a while ago. Yeah, I have.
I just recently watched it with the with the little islands and all that.
Yes.
So I've started digging into a therapy technique called internal family systems. Have you heard of it?
No.
So it's really, really interesting. It's like schema therapy, but with some different frameworks.
Yep.
And I've been working with a therapist recently, and he recommended that I watch this movie. And basically the end of it was really sweet because I don't know if you remember it, but for anyone that hasn't seen it, I don't want to ruin it, but there's this version of the main girl in the story inside the brain, right? That's just like sadness. It's a sadness one. That's like constantly stuffing up, making mistakes, just ruining everything. And then at the end of the movie, or near the end of the movie, there's this moment where one of the other characters is just like really sad and like refusing to do anything, and not, it's all hinging on this one character getting up and getting out and helping support the team to make everything right in the movie without ruining it. But the main kind of like internal character, Joy, is kind of the thing that leads the charge most of the time, and Joy didn't have any idea how to manage this like breakdown. But then out of nowhere, the sadness character comes in and just sits with the other character. And for me, I was like watching this movie and I was like, oh shit, it's a random ass Disney movie, but like it's had such a deep meaning to it in that moment where, like you mentioned, lived experience allows us to connect with people and it allows people to heal.
But
that's what happened.
Yeah. And I think what you just described there, those children movies with those deeper meanings, because there's so many of those kids movies where you're like, whoa, this hits when you've got the awareness. But what you just described there, the sitting next to someone, that's empathy. And there's a difference between empathy and sympathy, okay? And sympathy is where you pity someone and you feel sorry for them. And it's like, oh, you have my sympathy, my deepest condolences. And then there's empathy that sits close to it, but it goes, hey, I feel and I know what you're going through. I'm not going to pretend that I'm living in it, but let me walk beside you. Let me sit beside you so that you're not so alone in that feeling. And I really, really love that because it's this beautiful energy exchange that happens when someone gives you real empathy, right? That's where it comes back down to someone feeling seen, someone recognizing they're not alone, but they don't expect you to, solve their whole problems and solve their shit. They're just like, okay, I can't do anything, but let me sit next to you. It's the most powerful gift someone can give someone.
How do you provide empathy to those around you, like specifically?
I live through, so one question that when I get asked on podcasts, I'll go a roundabout way to explain this, but it's is always, what would you do if you had a superpower, right? Like if you had one superpower, what would it be? And so many people will probably be like invisibility or like, the ability to travel. Mine is the ability to see someone with full context. And I know that sounds like what, but how I give empathy is because I recognize that people are the experts in their own life. If I had 100% context of why someone has lived the way that they've lived, it would probably make sense why their actions are the way that they have come out. And so empathy for me is trying to just be able to understand full context of someone, knowing that I will never have it. Knowing that I will never get there. And instead of seeking to argue, I seek to listen. And that for me has changed. It's helped my intimate relationships. It's helped my relationships with my parents. We don't always have to agree with things, but having empathy and compassion for people is like, I don't agree with you, but I can see where you're coming from. Or I don't fully understand, but please help me.
And how do you navigate challenging scenarios from that space of curiosity?
Language. So asking really good questions. I think funny we're on a podcast, but the use of language. The most powerful speakers, writers, and oracles of the world are the ones that communicate the best, and the most healthiest relationships are the ones that can achieve an actual harmonious communication, which we don't always get it right because we're two different people. And I speak from, when we have quarrels or fights with especially our intimate partners because they see every side of us. But navigating, asking questions like how and what, and I'm curious to why you think like this. The story that I'm telling myself, it's a Brene Brown strategy. Brene Brown teaches if you come from a place of attacking. Why did you do this? Or why did you do that? This made me feel a certain way. The person receiving that is already going to be on the defense, because a why question is very provocative. It's very like, well, you, blame, blame, blame. But instead, if you shift the language to, hey, Adam, when you said this, it made me feel a certain way. And the story that I'm telling myself now is that you were making fun of me. And so you put a lot of the accountability back on the person that's speaking to actually allow for you to just go, did I get it right or am I wrong? And that helps shift from blame and fault to going, Adam might actually be like, oh my God, Mel, like that is not what I was thinking at all. Or when I said that out in public, that's not what I meant. And so the sentence of the story that I'm telling myself really holds accountability and going, hey, I'm just checking in. This didn't feel right for me, or this really hurt me. And the story that I've made up in my head now is that you feel X, Y, Z, or you did this. And so is that what you intended to do? And often people will tell you whether if their intention was to hurt you, they'll tell you.
Yeah. You're like, I hate you.
Yeah, literally. But then if they've gotten it wrong, you've almost given someone a back door to be able to recorrect. And I think course recorrection, we're humans. We're not perfect beings. Sometimes I don't get it right. And having the humility to say, like, I'm sorry first, because the relationship matters more to me than being right or wrong. I think that's something that's really important.
Definitely. Okay, this has been a really interesting kind of segue, but there's a bunch of other things I'd want to talk to you about just on the kind of on the business side of things. I feel like we've touched on some really interesting stuff. So taking a step back, going back to kind of the work you do on the entrepreneurial side of things. So run me through the businesses that you have. There's the event business, and then you've got to share in this, you're working on this
Stop Scrolling
expo.
Ego Expo. Yep.
Yeah. And then Stop Scrolling, which is, it looked like a qualified sales lead company.
Yeah. So as I explained, I started my company back in 2017 in events, and through the natural progression of events, I feel like you do marketing as well, and we do a lot of PR and media. And then I naturally fell in love as well with building brands. So something that I'm really passionate about, again, as we spoke about, is like bringing something from like an idea to a reality, even if it's in the form of an event. So when we take on someone's event, we bring their values and their company to life. And so the natural progression of that, when I had to narrow down, you know, like an elevator pitch, I really had to go, well, what do I do? Because I do such a multifaceted amount of things. And as humans, we're not just one thing. But in the business world, I think it is important to niche down and go, well, what are you going to be known for? Because no one wants a generalist. Everyone wants to go to a specialist. And so when I reworked my own personal brand, I came out and was like, I'm a brand builder. So what I love doing is taking someone's personal brand or a company brand and then growing that so that more eyes can see it, more people can trust it, and we go out and market that way. We all want more market share. Ideally, you know, with a business, we're all designed to make profit. We want to make more of an impact, income, and influence. And so I'm really, really passionate about that side of things. So where the business opportunities have sort of come, one, they always have to be aligned. It's not for my ego to own multiple companies. It just happens that I can benefit or assist in multiple companies as a director of the business. I'm not always the day-to-day operator in all of those businesses as well. I come in and I do the high-level strategy stuff, but I also realize from what I love about people, I love people so much. I love selling. And that's something that's just like, so I never thought I'd be a salesperson, but when I go, what is sales? Sales is going, hey, here's something that I really value that I think you would value. Do you trust me in delivering that? That's really all sales is, trust and value at any point in time. When you can give trust and value, you can get a sale. And so I love that because I think that I'm arrogant enough to even think if you can ask really good questions and build genuine relationships, you don't even need a sales strategy, because sales comes from going, what do you need? Let me figure out if I can provide you that. And often that will be the thing that gets you a sale. So they're the kind of businesses that I'm really into at the moment. Everything entrepreneurship, everything that's coming out now with building a personal brand. So people love you, they want to work with you. And over time, over the next decade, I really think that building brands are something that's going to be the thing. Corporate companies are slowly, it's changing. The economy is changing. The rise of TikTok, the rise of Meta, the rise of even Thread and X, you're looking at the rise of the influencer. And I don't mean an influencer as in like, oh, look at me and buy my products. I mean the rise of an independent person that has influence. That is very much, I see, changing the market scope. We are trusting corporate companies less. We are trusting brands in terms of like a company less. We don't want to be sold to anymore. We live in a day and age now where we have over 10,000 ads hitting at us at any point in time. We actually want to trust someone that's going to be able to deliver or like build the thing that we're doing. And I think when you asked just before about how I impacted people's lives, it's because they have a trust with me and they really value that whatever Mel does or says or refers to, she's going to have her word.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Well, I like that. So they're all tying into one another, and these things have just kind of developed naturally. You haven't forced much of it. It just kind of happened.
Yeah, and I think the more authentic you are, doors open for you. And like you have to put yourself in those positions. I don't luck is preparation meets opportunity. So you have to be able to see those. But the more active I am in this space, the more people just go, she's serious about what she does. And it's that discipline thing. It's the character building stuff. Character building isn't built just on one thing. You have to do that thing long enough, on a very long enough time horizon, years, for people to actually go, oh, like, yeah, she's actually in it.
Yeah, exactly. And just showing up consistently. I think you made a good point. I've been quite generalistic with the things that I do, and I've found it really hard to explain what's in my head most of the time.
And I think a lot of people, Adam, you're not the only one, right? Like it got to a point when I was going to all these networking events and people, the first question that everyone asks, right, is, oh, hi, I'm insert name here. What do you do with yourself, right? That's always the first thing that people say at any dinner party or social gathering. And what I really struggled with, and a lot of people could relate, was I was like, oh, what don't I do? And I'd laugh it off and be like, oh, it's so hard to, explain who I am. And I'm like, oh my God, that was the thing that's actually hindering me from getting more deals, more business opportunities. Because someone that says something with conviction, I'm a brand builder or like I build businesses, it instantly goes, oh, tell me more about that. What does that even mean? So like if you can at the end of the I am sentence say who you are and what you do with conviction, people are going to trust that a lot more because you're the guy that has confidence.
Yeah. Well, see, the thing is, what I've found is I'm not very good as somebody with just like a specific job, like that's where I fall down a little bit, but what I am good at is piecing so many different elements together to create really, really amazing ideas. So like I'm just an idea generating machine. Like I'm so curious that I create really, really great ideas. And then when I need to, when I have the space to, I can execute on most of those ideas because I'm like frameworked enough to do that. But that doesn't lend very well to a job.
But what is that job? Because if so you have ideas, like what tangible outcome does that actually do for people? Nothing
until it's executed on. That's the thing. So what it's come to for me is like, unless I find somebody or like, I think my space in the world is going to be, unless I really figure out how to niche down, my space in the world is going to be someone recognizes me and says, here's $10 million, go do with it what you need. Or I just build my own projects because I'm never going to explain this to anybody else. Yeah. And I've kind of accepted that maybe I'm going to create my own outcomes because.
So you're an entrepreneur. Do you identify as that word? Or have you just kind of said it? Well, you are, because the very definition I would say of an entrepreneur is someone that takes their own risks and pays, a future for themselves or creates an idea and turns it into a reality. They go and they bring it to fruition. And I think that's okay. If that's who you are, you're a natural entrepreneur. And so it doesn't matter what the businesses are, because who you are, you'll naturally succeed in anything that you kind of go into, which is what I've done. Things have fallen into my lap that I'm like, that's a bit left of field, but I love the challenge. You know, we now have a sales autopilot lead generation business. And I'm like, but I love the idea of like, stop scrolling is our business. So I'm like, how can we help brands and businesses? How do you stop scrolling and land on their content? And it's that piece of content that generates the revenue.
So what is that? So that's you run the ads and then you have like a sales team to qualify leads?
Yeah, so we close and sell because I had mentioned before I love selling. So we'll I will give you 8 to 10 booked meetings into your calendar and I've already closed them for you. So like obviously you then have to take them on because at the end of the day it's your business. But I put myself as a setter and closer in your business because we're that confident that I can book you 10 clients that will generate 10 beautiful relationships. I call them relationships instead of leads because at the end of the day, you never know where, if you have a really good, say, sales call or like even this, like a very half an hour phone call with someone, they might not also be ready to buy, right? Not everyone's a hot audience, but if you build a good enough relationship.
Hey, speak for yourself.
How do you be front of mind for when that person then eventually goes into the buying cycle or when that person eventually goes and is problem aware? That's what I love doing, the relationship building part. So if I give you 10 new connections every single month and you just expand those connections with no intent, like obviously like it is to build businesses, but with intention to just add value, there's just this beautiful thing that happens. Life, good things happen to good people.
Yeah, exactly. And I think I'm noticing now that my world improves the more my network improves. Like it's getting to this point now where I can go almost anywhere in the world and I'm keyed in somehow, which is really fun. Life is so much more fun now.
But how good is that? Especially when you elevate your circle, right? The more opportunities happen because you're elevating their circle. So it's like you're never going to be able to meet, like if they're at the country club or something and they go, I know this person. It's like, but how do you start there? You have to start by being immersed in those communities and in those cultures. And it's the same as if your brand is everything. So if you are seen on the weekend at pubs and you go out and you drink a lot and every photo that you have has a cocktail in your hand, great. But naturally you hang out with people that party, which is great if that's where you want to be seen.
That's what you want.
Correct.
Yeah, exactly.
So if you're naturally around entrepreneurs, podcasters, business owners, all of that, what do you think happens? We want to buy and sell a business. Adam, do you can we acquire one day you might be as big as Joe Rogan and someone wants to come and acquire your podcast, but it can only happen if you put yourself in those rooms.
Well, it's a funny story that just happened. So on Friday I did a podcast and I put a story up and then a friend of mine is doing an event and he messages me and says, hey, is your guest free on this date to be a paid guest to the event? So I've just connected them. Like, there you go. Done.
Yeah. I think the beautiful thing about podcasting in this space as well is you are a people connector. I think we were saying this offline. It's like you get to just like learn, meet a bunch of new people. We're in such a great time where I think anyone that is in the podcasting space knows how much you can leverage your network and but you actually have real friends that come out of it. Like, no kidding. I've been on podcasts that now I've done business with or, somewhere down the path I've done referrals and just because I genuinely love what they're doing and successful people just want to see other successful people succeed.
Yeah, it's so much fun. And I'm noticing the access that you could never get half these people to sit down with you and talk to you, but you put a microphone in front of them and they're like happy to chat for hours. It's great. Yeah. It's so much fun. I love it. It really fires me up every time I do a podcast and afterwards I leave very energized, which is a good sign. I'm conscious of your time, so I wanted to get through a few more things.
Sure.
But just before we move on to a bit more of like rapid fire. There are a couple of questions I had. What's the story that led from you to go from being the event subcontractor, starting your own business, taking that leap?
Oh, naivety. I was so ignorant. Like, honestly, because if I knew how hard it would be, if I knew how hard that road was, I would never have done it. So I think as a business owner,
so funny.
As a business, it's easy to be running a multi-million-dollar company when it's not your money. And no doubt. And then you come out and you're like, I'm going to run my own events business. And then you start your ABN.
Fuck.
And then so I started my ABN on April 20th, 2017. And then I was like, I'm open for business. No one knew me or cared. And so that's where I had to sort of like, Ego Expo was a platform that we created. So Ego Expo is Australia's largest street culture expo. We basically bring online independent brands to meet their customers face to face. That's all the platform really was. And so I was so passionate about it because I love, again, storytelling. And I feel like as Australian brands, and we can do so much on Shopify, we can do so much online, but until you get to meet, touch, look and feel a product, it's really hard to just be on an internet world. And that was literally the core of how the business was built. But we started out and I just had to door knock. I door knocked over 1,000 different calls, sales, meeting people. And that's how I built the events company. I sold people on a unicorn dream, really, because I had no data. When you looked up my ABN, it was like 3 months old, and people just trusted me though. And that's where I learned to really be able to sell, because if you have a decent product, but people like you and they want to do business with you, like, you'll gain their trust.
Yeah, definitely. And then what was the first, so run me through the first client you ended up getting after going from.
So we had no events, but Ego became our flagship event of what people saw that we could do. We had 48 brands come under one roof and basically have their own pop-up stores, and we brought 1,800 people through the doors for the first year in business. So that first year, I also lost a lot of money. So I want to preface with that. It wasn't very cool. I lost $183,000 in my first year of business to get it running. Yeah.
Fuck yeah.
Yeah. And when we talk about failures, that's probably one of my most humbling failures, because I would not be the person I would be now if I didn't take that heavy loss. Now I'm so passionate about making people avoid those heavy losses, because you can actually avoid making such heavy investments and making these really expensive mistakes.
So what did you do wrong?
Everything.
Go on.
I created a budget and then set and forgot that budget. I never looked at the budget again. Yeah. I was because I was a business owner, right? So I got to call all the shots, and it was just we were spending money we bought trams as billboards. We just spent not effective marketing with not very strong strategies of how to get an ROI, return on investment in our investments. And so the first year we lost a lot of that, but, and I was like, holy crap. But then we had proof of concept. No, because it was oh my God, that's you can buy a deposit of a house, right? And I had borrowed a lot of money from my mum and my auntie, and there was a lot of weight on that. And there was moments of that where I went into some serious depression because I didn't know how I was going to be able to come out of that. But then what happened was people were incredibly forgiving, going, people in business was yeah, you win some, you lose some, Mel. We don't blame you for, anything. We all got a really good time. We had a great weekend out of it. So you'll be fine. And just listening to people shrug off these losses where it was my entire identity, right? But then but our first year we had gotten Volley as a brand, Superdry came on as the second year. So we had gotten actually quite a lot. I had sold to some big companies. And yeah, they kind of just normalized the losses for me. And so what did we do? We got back on the horse and we kept going. Second year, we lost $53,000.
You sound like me.
Annually, but then obviously over the course of the time now we've turned it around. But I think, yeah, if you can take some of those L's and realize it's part of the process. I say it because I've lived it, right? I say it and I'm who else can put their hand on their heart and say they lost 183,000 in their first year of business, right? Thank you. Wow,
I did it in my 7th year though. I thrived and then shit the bed in 12 months.
But it humbles you. You go, how do
humbled. I'm back on the floor.
Yeah, don't stay there for too long. But I think that's
the right?
I think that's. But isn't that the lived experience story? Like, again, it's not a cool story if you're like, I inherited a bunch of money and then made bank. Like, what? No.
I was really clever, saved a lot, worked hard, was conservative, ran a bunch of really good events and projects for a number of 7 years. And then I watched all these cowboys crushing it. So I thought maybe I'm too conservative. So I started trying to run big festivals and then lost $300,000 in 12 months.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I'm going to stop doing that. And that was like a week ago. So I don't know what next.
This is raw. This is real time.
Right.
Yeah, I mean the festival game. I know Travis Gretsch who runs Ultra. So I'm obviously in the event space as well. But yeah, the event space 100% is hard, and to build a brand from scratch. Look at Fire Festival. On the other side of the world, that was like a terrible decision. But we've also had here
they're back now, and they sold out. They're doing the second one.
Oh God. But yeah, I think you'll learn a bunch. At the end of the day, I know I'm coming from such a place of privilege, but it's money. And if you've fallen and you've made money before in your previous years, this is just an L, and then you'll get up. This is only half time for you, first quarter. You've got so much longer.
My friend said that. He's like, he called me and he told me his story of when he had to sell like a bunch of houses. He was doing really well, made a few bad, tough calls. And he goes, it's just half time and I'm down 250,000, but that's okay. And now fast forward 5 years, he manages an artist who's nominated for a Grammy, and they are, they're crushing it.
Imagine if he gave up. Then Dyson, the vacuums, the bagless vacuums.
I've got his autobiography.
Incredible. So 600 goes for the Dyson to become a bagless vacuum, who now is like obviously arguably the innovator and the pioneer of vacuum cleaners. Like if you've got a Dyson, you've got status. Imagine if he gave up on his 599th time and was like, I can't do this. I'm going to call it. The Dyson would not exist. And so there's stories like that I think they exist, and they're there because they're there to inspire and motivate us and to know that we're not alone. And so just like your friend said, it's a mindset thing, right? You're half time, mate. Get back up and we keep going.
It's just been the sense of identity and success. Like the challenge I've really faced, and I'm working through it, is like, if I have to sell a house, I'm no longer that homeowner. Like, you know what I mean? Like, am I a failure? If I don't have this like cool, fun event brand that everyone likes, and, every time someone says, oh, you run that, that's great. Like, who am I?
Yeah.
They're the thing. If I don't have, $100,000 in the bank,
who am I?
Am I going to be loved? You know what I mean? Like, they're the questions I'm genuinely asking, and they're what's at the root of the fear and pain and like disappointment.
100%. But like, if we, like, all I want to say to you, Adam, honestly, is like, you're so enough, right? Like, you are so enough. And this sense of enoughness, I live through it too. And once you really shed yourselves of that layer and realize like your family and friends, like, I don't know if you've gotten to a level where I talk on stages, we do okay. But the reality is, when I'm at my most truest, authentic me, are friends that are just talking shit in front of like the TV, or like my partner who we're just ordering takeout and we watch Netflix. Like, they're the relationships that, despite all of it, they still love you.
Yeah, exactly. I think there's more to it than like wanting more love and more adoration. I think it's more adoration than love, right? It's like this feeling of acceptance from a wide variety of people that you don't really like care about at the core of it. Like you do care. Not caring is the wrong word to use there, but it's more like their opinion doesn't hold genuine weight in the way that you live your life, but you put so much meaning on what they think still. And it's really interesting to have to like unwind that. And you have to stay grounded. Like it's a humbling experience.
Yeah.
So, I'm conscious of your time. I'd love to ask you a few more things before we bounce. What's been the kindest thing somebody's ever done for you?
Oh, my partner every single day. He leaves so I work later into the night. He's a fitness trainer. So he goes to bed earlier than me. He leaves the toothpaste and like my toothbrush ready for me and my skincare all set in the bathroom. And I've never had someone do that for me before. Shout out to all the guys that are he does 1% every day to make my life easier. And I think it's those, and he does it without, it's in the private of our own home. There's no accolades there. He does it because it genuinely helps make my life easier. And so, he hands down is the cutest, most romantic guy that I'm very blessed to have him.
I love that. And what's your ideal morning and evening look like on a routine basis?
I'm very into my day is so chaos during the 9 to 5 operational hours. So for me, having my morning coffee, having my morning pre-workout drink, and then going for a walk with my dog, that is my time that I get to own and honor. And I feel like once I set that right, the rest of the day I'm okay with the chaos in between. I'm okay with putting out fires. And then I think evening, being able to spend those quiet moments with my partner, and just, again, ground and deflect and reflect, and then do it all again the next day.
Mm-hmm. And if there was one book that you could get somebody to read that would have the most impact in their life, what would it be?
Atomic Habits, James Clear.
Nice. How come?
His book and habit stacking is the thing that's built my success. I actually owe it all to him, to the ability to break down, stack your habits day in, day out. The most success I've ever achieved is because I've been incredibly disciplined in my structure and my routine. Not that doesn't mean I don't have spontaneity, but the more in control that I am, the more that I serve better in the world. And so, Atomic Habits.
Mm-hmm. Nice. I haven't read it yet, but I get the concept. It's on the list. And what's one change that somebody could make in their life today to begin to live a life similar to yours?
Stop caring what other people think. I think if we
don't kill everybody, because you have to care a little bit.
Yeah, but if more people just lived in their true authenticity and let their quirkiness and weirdness shine and be a bit unscripted, I think letting people fall in love with that is so much easier and sustainable for your life, because the moment that you have to feel like you have to be someone you're not, it's just not going to work out for you in the long run. But when you get to play in your truth and stay in your power and just live authentically as you, there's so much rewardness for that, because people will fall in love with you and the right people will come to you, and then the other people they'll self-evict themselves from your life.
Nice. And is there anything that you're excited about at the moment that you want listeners to be across?
I'm excited for what the future holds. I have a really good feeling about 2024 for me. I've been building and in my building phase for a long time, and I feel like this year is the year where we will hit some really amazing milestones. I'm driven by retiring my mum. So that's kind of the only goal for me. It's been like that for a little bit now. I lost my dad last year. Lucky we didn't go down that path. But I lost my dad to cancer last year, and I was his carer until he passed. And I think now I get to go all in on mum, and that excites me, because for the longest time, dad needed all my attention, and bless him. And now that he's away from pain, I just want to ensure that my mum, I owe my parents my entire life. They gave me life. They moved to a country that they did not know for a better life, didn't speak English. And here I am getting to really embody and have these incredible, amazing experiences. I get to share on podcasts like yours. And I think that's just really cool.
Yeah, I love that. I'm sorry to hear about your
That's okay.
Yeah, I haven't had that experience yet, but it's tough. It's really tough.
And it will come, right?
Yeah,
not to be morbid. It's just like sometimes we go
coming
and
for all of us.
Yeah, apparently we don't have a cure yet to be immortal.
Yeah, but Mr. What's his name?
Elon Musk?
No, not Elon Musk. The Brian Johnson, he's working on it for us. So
right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Do you know who I'm talking about?
No, but actually,
the $2 million a year anti-aging guy.
Right.
Anyway, you look him up. It's wild.
See, whereas I think the beauty of what this life is so beautiful is that it does come to an end. And I think that's what makes the dash between the date that we're born and the date that we die so much more meaningful, because that dash is everything in between.
Yeah. Yeah. What do you want your dash to be?
That I left people in a better place than when I found them.
I love it. And where can people find you if they're interested in exploring more?
So it's in the show notes. Click the links below.
We haven't got to the point where we're doing good show notes yet. Joe, my editor, get to it.
So the box should come off around here.
Yeah.
But no, I'm very active on all social platforms. So again, as a branding expert, you Google me, you can find me. LinkedIn, TikTok, Instagram, all of it. I'm active on everything. I don't have a VA.
What's the handles?
So it's at Mellieu, MELLIEYU. And then mellieu.au is kind of where you find all the stuff to ways to work with me and see what happens in my world.
Mm-hmm. Brilliant. And last question to tie it all off. What do you think the meaning of life is?
To love and be loved in return.
Brilliant. Thank you, Mel. I appreciate your time. It was really great chatting to you.
Thank you, Adam. Thank you. Hope to chat again soon.
Sounds good.